great. It's okay?
Looks better when you're further away. Can you check that audio level? Check that's coming through. Can you talk for us, Joel?
Ah oui, je vais parler maintenant. Bonjour.
Sound good?
I will speak in French so you won't understand. Good? En français. What?
Just speak into the microphone.
Sure. So now I will have two kind of presentation, and I won't speak too much about France. I will speak especially more about BDS as such, and BDS in Brussels. But actually, France is not so different. Belgium is just worse, but because the difference between France and Belgium is the fact that there is a huge Jewish community in France, so they react, and so there are debates. In Belgium, there are no more Jews left, like I would say in the northern countries, like, I don't know, Sweden, Norway. And so it's very difficult to counteract when there is almost no intellectuals, besides me, to counteract. No, but it's you know, the Holocaust destroyed us almost. So let's start about anti-Semitic invariance in the mirror of the BDS campaign. And actually it's not strange. Let me see if it's a good one. If not, it's too late anyway. Yes, more or less. Okay, that's it. It was subliminal. It's the best way to learn. So, let's speak about BDS. What is important when you heard about BDS, some people will believe it's the peace movement. I would say the equivalent of Shalom Arshav, which actually I love. And this is how they present themselves. Omar Barghouti, which is one of its founder, not only says that BDS is a democratic progressive movement, but also anti-racist and especially pacifist. And of course, if it will be a pacifist movement, I would definitely support it, because personally I'm a pacifist, and let's say Netanyahu is not really my cup of tea, but it's okay. I haven't said it. I don't want to disturb anyone. Actually, it's in French, the title. So, unfortunately, if you worked on BDS, you will see almost immediately that it's not, unfortunately, a peace movement. It's not the equivalent of Shalom Arshav, because it's written there. That's good. And thank God there is, how would you call it, PowerPoint presentation. The prerequisite it sets for negotiation makes them impossible, and the core, of course, is the question of the refugees. If you believe that all the Palestinian refugees has to come back, of course it's going to be the end of a Jewish state. There won't be a Jewish state anymore, and this is really, they don't want to discuss this question. And of course, I'm an historian first, and I like to quote the person itself. So there is here a quotation of Omar Barghouti, and there is even the, how would I say, it means the reference. It was made in Ottawa University, and he said, I can't buy the two-state solution. This is not only pragmatically impossible, but it has never been a moral solution. The first problem is the right to return. If the refugee return, it will be impossible to have a two-state solution, because, as the Palestinian commentators noted, you would then have to deal with a Palestinian state alongside a Palestinian state, rather than a Palestinian state besides an Israeli state. He is right. And that's why he is against the two-state solution. So Omar Barghouti simply assures that the situation of Jews in the new state would be comparable to that of American or French and Jews. It means minority in their country, but nevertheless protected and have equal, more or less equal right, let's say dhimmi status, as it was, now within the Arabic realm. So what is BDS? BDS is a refusal movement, and, like Lenin, more or less. You know what Clausewitz used to say? According to Clausewitz, war is another way to make politics. And for Lenin, it was just a country. Politics was another way to make war. Sometimes you can, more or less discuss, but you know that at the end, it's going to be them of us. And it's exactly the same, I would say, with BDS. Politics, it means this supposedly peace movement, is another way to destroy, let's say, Israel. So in a sense, BDS is closer to Hamas than even the Palestinian authorities, and another quote of Omar Barghouti that he said in November 2007, when he signed the appeal called One State Solution, and he made no secret of it, and I remind you what this appeal said. This appeal renders null and void the first claim of the Palestinian Charter concerning the end of the occupation of the Palestinian territories conquered in 1967. It seems to us that it is time to replace this myth of two-state with a single state. So at least we know what is the objective of BDS. And nobody knows it because in our campuses, there is actually in my university, there is a BDS committee, and some genuine pacifist or progressive will support them, believing that it's a peace movement. So it's a violent, anti-violent movement or an anti-violent, violent movement. So another quotation of Barghouti that he made against French socialists when he was in the States in June 2011 in Chicago, he exploded his rage against comrades of French comrades, and he said, "Normally I'm a nice person, but I don't tolerate a white person lecturing us about nonviolence." He was applauded. I told him something that may seem racist. The white race is the most violent in the history of humanity. Look at the First World War and the Second World War and the Holocaust and over and over and over again. And colonialism. I do not allow you to lecture on violence and non-violence because, of course, the Socialist Party, you know, they wanted him to condemn the Hamas, and he refused because he considered, in a sense, that while he proposed, you know, another way, I would say, to destroy Israel, it doesn't mean that he's against what the Hamas do against Israel. So it's a refusal movement, and the boycott is an end. And the end is the destruction of Israel and not a mean. And the mean would be, for me, the sharing the land. It means to have a Palestinian state besides Israel. In short, as a mean to destroy Israel in the name of the good, it means of the good people, etc. And this is the point that I wanted to stress today. This is well understood by all those who reject the Jewish sign. I don't know if you understand the word Jewish sign. En français, it's easy. Le signe juif means everything which sounds Jew. It means not Israeli or Zionist, but Jew. And this makes interesting to see how popular is BDS, not only by progressists, but also by people who has a problem with the Jews. It means some extreme right, of course, but also extreme left, and people of different origin, etc. It's a good pretext to boycott Jews, not only Israeli or Zionist. And this is, I don't know if you heard about it, this is an American singer called Miziano. He's Jew, but he's not Israeli. I don't know if he's Zionist. He's just reggae, singer. And he was boycotted in a festival in Spain, and because people want him to condemn Israel. The only way for him to sing was to say that he was anti-Zionist. And he refused to do it. He said, "It's not my concern. I'm a singer, I'm American, and I don't have to say anything about the conflict." And finally, the ban was rejected, and he finally could sing, but it was a huge polemic in Spain. Another one, I don't know if you heard about him, is Enrico Macias, very famous Algerian-born French Jew, and it's impossible for him to go back to sing in Algeria. Because people, of course, he's a Zionist, he defends Israel, and it's impossible for him to go back to the country where he's born. It means Algeria, and then you can see it's in French, and it's, insults, because this is taken, of course, from internet, and it says Enrico Macias support massacre in Palestine. He support, he was in a meeting supporting Israel crimes, etc. And that's it. And it's quite vulgar, I would say. Another example, this singer, I don't know if he's good or not, he's a French singer, actually binational, and he was representative for France in Eurovision contest. You heard about Eurovision? And they say that this man collaborated with the KKL. You know what is KKL? Keren Kayemet Layesot. And it means almost a genocidal organization, etc. So you understand the level, of rejection and how, I would say, BDS is used. So what is interesting is the fact that BDS is like a syncretic place. People will join, in a sense, to be able to protest, I would say, against the state of Israel. In April, I think it was, actually there is no date. That is very unfortunate of myself. But I think it was around 5 years ago. There was a demonstration organized by BDS France, and the title of the demonstration was Separation Between the CRIF and the State. You understand? It means it's like separation between the church and the state. So arguing that in fact there is no separation between what is CRIF. CRIF is the equivalent of the Board of Deputies. It means it's the body representing French Jewry in France. So if it's true, it means that the Jews are governing France, because this is a demonstration dedicated to the separation of the French power with the French state. It's a 19th century, I would say, motto. And it was launched by BDS, but what is interesting is the fact that many people did attend. It was a huge success. Thousands of people decided to demonstrate, went in the streets, and this is, you know, a poster of extreme Catholic rights, and well, and you can see this is the sign of people rejecting Vatican II. This is really the people who reject actually Jean 23, the Pope Giovanni 23, and so Civitas, Catholic extreme, for the separation of the Jewish, I would say, of the Jews and the states. And okay, why not? This you can understand. But also then you will find radical rights. And not only that they say you have to separate the Jews from the states, but, and they ask, you know, and, you know, they are praising Euro-Palestine, at least, etc. And they, you know, showing a portrait of Nelson Mandela. So it means Jew apartheid, and those are extreme right people. And then you can see, I don't know if you know the people, it's the Prime Minister of France and the President of France. It means Val and the former, and François Hollande, present as a Jew and for the separation of the CRIF and the state. Then you will see, etc. Another one, this is two presidents of the CRIF. So, control of inferior race. So it means that the Jews, he was the president of the CRIF, control Prime Minister of France and the President of France. And this is really like an old vocabulary, a vocabulary of the, I would say, pre-Holocaust vocabulary, etc. And this is the same, this is another president of CRIF, and of course with a kind of scatology, and this is also very common. How would you call this animal? Pieuvre?
An octopus.
A what? Octopus. My God, I knew this word. A Jewish octopus. And this is interesting, but even leftists did participate. Those are young communists. And also, you know, they demonstrate for the separation of the CRIF and the state, member of the Young Communist League. And this is, you know, he used to be professor in St. Anthony's College, Tariq Ramadan, and Tariq Ramadan on his Facebook page, of course, he shared, how to say, a post of François Bourgat, who is professor of university professor in south of France, and he says, when a courageous law, a Republican courageous law, asking for the separation of, let's say, the Jewish influence and the state. And this man teach at Aix-en-Provence, France, and Tariq Ramadan, good question. Good question. He should have asked what about the women, but he didn't. It was just about the CRIF. And those are Islamic anti-Semite. This is a page we people of France ask for. And again, you will see François Hollande depicted as a Jew. And this is President Sarkozy, as you know. And then, of course, it's written, we ask for, and voila. Etc., etc., etc. So it's a very syncretic. The Jewish sign can gather together different kind of people. And this is the essence, I would say, of today anti-Semitism. It's really like a new syncretism between, of course, extreme right, also extreme left, of course, less important, and the third part will be Islamic people. I would say the core. So BDS and anti-Semitic environment. I was interested to see what kind of argument BDS would promote to push people not to buy Jewish products. It's interesting. Why not, in a sense? If it will be products only from the disputed, occupied, whatsoever territory, you can think about it. You can discuss it. Is it the case? It's not the case. It's much more, it's much more harsh, if you will see. And you will see it. That's why it's important, I think, to know about. Again, I've got problem. Okay, it's solved. I don't need a sake. So that's why it's important to know about history and to know about iconology, to know where do they take it from, all their propaganda. And you will say it takes from history. It's a pretext to reactivate anti-Jewish myth. It means to fight against. And you know, I've been discussing this morning. And of course, amongst those great myths are the following, you know, ritual infanticide and cannibalism, which is really dedicated to the Jews, which implies an intrinsic cruelty of the group, a disposition to murder as an invariant cultural threat. Of course, the deicide, I spoke about it too this morning, and of course the hatred of the other, the idea of an intrinsic superiority supposed to derive from divine election, etc. You can read like me. So the Jew is constructed as a satanic enemy of mankind, the cosmopolitan nomad, exploiter by definition, the Boyan plotter, and the child killer by religious necessity. And really the child killer is really the core, I would say, of today anti-Semitic propaganda. So these more or less elaborate anti-Jewish stories, which circulate in the form of legend and rumors, constitute the ideological dimension of what I call Judeophobia. And the greatest anti-Jewish myth, that of the bloodthirsty cruelty and criminal nature of the Jews, is supported by the legend. I spoke this morning of ritual murder, and again, of course, this blood legend is a product of what Jacques Le Goff, the famous French historian, called the Long Middle Age. It started, remember, 1144, Norwich, England, and it stopped. Did it stop? No. But at least the last great moment was Kielce, 1946, Poland, when 42 Jews who escaped the Holocaust were killed, including pregnant women. Why? Because they were supposed to have tried to kill a Polish child, 1946, Poland. So, again, you don't see it very well, but it's classical representation of Jewish cruelty against children, babies. What they do there, it's exactly what they did to Jesus. It's the deicide. It's a kind of, you know, he is like Jesus on his cross, and as you know, they are using his blood for special preparation, matzah preparation. Again, Simon of Trent, I spoke about it. This is a Quattrocento. You will find hundreds, if not thousands, of those representations. And this is Poland, 18th century, made by the French artists. And this is supposed also to represent, you know, a Jew killing young Poles and then drinking the blood. So this is really one of the most important accusations against the Jews. This was, you don't see it very well, Judenstein in Austria, even in Italy. It's a fascist magazine called Difesa della Razza, Defense of the Race. And this is a kind of, how would I say, mutation of the myth, because the two rabbis, they suck directly with the straw the blood of the child. And of course, there it's a Christian child, not yet a Muslim child, a Christian child. The last big case within the Tsarist regime, you know, Bailey's Affair. Those who have my age remember a Hollywood film. It was about the Bailey's Affair. The man who was accused of trying to kill the young boy actually was found, he was innocent. And despite the fact it was Tsarist Russia, And you can see how the young boy is represented. Of course, this is an anti-Semitic poster. L'affaire Bélis. This is a French extreme left magazine, L'Assiette au beurre, anarchist. And you can see, and it's called The Jew, and the Jew needs wars to fructify, to have gold. And this is really classical representation. And always, I would say, the connection between blood, the Jew, and the killings. So another example, 1914, the crimes, it's a book with a preface of Drummond. Drummond was, I would say, the Pope of French anti-Semitism, and Drummond accepted to write the preface the book, and he said the existence of the people of Israel is nothing more than a constant struggle against the Semitic instinct that attracts the Hebrew to Moloch, the child-eating god, to the monstrous Phoenician idols. In brief, among Jews, the ritual crimes is in the race. Ritual infanticides among Jews is merely the periodic manifestation of an irrepressible racial instinct, the manifestation of which are codified by the Talmud. And, you know, Drummond was really, in his book, The Jewish France, had around 200 editions. It was like a classical anti-Semitic book. And it's before Hitler, it's France, 1914. And of course the Nazis, they did, of course, exploit also this myth. And this is, again, the Stürmer, the very famous Nazi magazine, when on every front page you always have this, Die Juden sind unser Unglück. And this is the very famous sentence that was actually created in the 19th century. It means this is anti-Semitism. If everything went wrong because of the Jews, because it's the evil of the society, etc. And the same, and this is very interesting. This is against the Stürmer. It's the very famous Phipps. His signature is somewhere here. Phipps was the main, I would say, cartoonist in Germany. And actually, he died in his bed in 1975, as far as I know. Well, he stayed for 2 years in jail, the poor guy. And this man was really responsible in the sense, you know, of actually the director of the Stürmer, Streicher, was hanged in Nuremberg. And you can see what anti-Semitism is. Anti-Semitism is an inversion. It means you accuse the Jew of what you want them, you know, of what you want to do to them. It means there, you know, the Jews are accused of, you know, a genocide. And actually, Holocaust is what? 1.5 million Jews killed, children, Jews, was going to be killed. And what is interesting is the fact that the Nazis were definitely against Christian religion, but they know they're public. And so, look, this is interesting. Golgotha, it means it works. They know that, of course, for the public, it's just a reminder of what the Jews did to Jesus, the deicides, even if they were Nazis. They know exactly how to appeal to the public, how it functions. So one might think that the Holocaust engendered by openly expressed racial, political, and social hatred would have made this infamous legend disappear. And as I said, unfortunately, it's not the case. On the contrary, those myths are today reactivated. The mythical stories serve as symbolic material for contemporary studies. Why? Its potential influence on people probably lies in the fact that being known and resurrected from time to time, this belief is cognitively easy to access. And it's true. It's so easy to connect, you know, Jew with evil, etc. It's difficult to find in the long history of European folklore a more convincing and absurd rumors, but also easier to resurrect than that of the Jewish bloodsucker, especially of children. Jewish vampirism is a collective belief that is far from having disappeared, as evidenced by the BDS campaign. And I'll go back to BDS now, and you will be surprised. You will be really surprised, as I was surprised. BDS updating of an old vocabulary in the service of recent treaty. And an example, and this is not the worst, but you know the legend of the poisonous Jew, if it's correct English, poisonous Jew, you know, like in the Middle Age. And they ask BDS France that you have to boycott Coca-Cola, Fanta, actually drinks that my daughter doesn't drink because it's too much sugar. But in the subconscious of the people, it's bad, so it's Jew. By definition, it's evil. So you can see, you know, and everything modern, by definition, must be Jew, Zionist, Israeli, etc. And this is again, you know, it's like, my God. And those companies has nothing to do with Israel, Zionism, or even Jew. It means Caterpillar, Cat, whatsoever. Coca-Cola, definitely not. Pepsi-Cola, of course not. It's bad, so it must be Jew. And very often, I don't know if it happens like this in England or in America, but very often you will find people, this is in France, they go in supermarket with, how would I say, Geiger counter, you know? And they will go, and when they will see, for instance, here, an Israeli product, the machine will, like it is radioactive. Like everything which is Israeli or Zionist is dangerous for life. And this man is dressed like it is, you know, antibacteriologic, etc. This is against, and this is very strange. Look how they are. This is, I think, in Sweden, or I think in the north and they are just trying to see if they are Israeli products. Of course, they have the machine when they see the numbers of Israel, of course it makes noise. It's symbolic, but this is also dating back from the Middle Age. But this is okay. And then the fact that the Jews are evil. Jerusalem Quartet, one of the best, you know, group of music that you can find, and this is a poster, you know, I think in England, and look how they are represented. It means they are like warmongers. The same with Batsheva. Definitely it's not a good presentation because I succeed to make it, it's like this. So Batsheva, whenever they come, you will find a lot of people boycotting Batsheva. Like Batsheva, you know, and even the fact that the director of Batsheva, well, he's a leftist. He's not a friend of Netanyahu. But who cares? He's a Jew and he's a Zionist and he's Israeli. That's enough to boycott him. And this is more interesting. The infanticides, always. This is a poster, you know, asking people not to buy Johnson & Johnson products. It's American, nothing to do with Israel. I don't think it's owned by Jews. Remember the baby, and they will show what? A baby with the stigmat of the Christ, more or less. Why? How? It's like this. It's not one case. I will show you more example of this. SodaStream. You don't like SodaStream? Okay. But why do you need, you know, to connect SodaStream with blood? To connect SodaStream with, you know, young girls with hands on the hands. Occupation is not green. Boycott, etc. And then keep calm on boycott. This is against Teva. You know, Teva, the medication. Teva is not good. It should be poisoned because it's Israeli, by definition, etc. This is just example. Pepsi Cola. Why? Okay, don't consume Coca-Cola, but why to connect it with Israel and not only to Israel, to child killing? The same with Adidas, a German product, and then of course Adidas supports Israeli war crimes. You see this, and this is, you know, again, and you can see there is something special. I don't think you will find the equivalent concerning Russia, China, whatsoever. It means, God knows that Turkey, Assad, this is against Coca-Cola, and this is very strange. They hate Coca-Cola. This, you know, does this not break your heart? If you don't mind the blatant massacre of Palestinian children, don't drink Coca-Cola. Palestinian blood need not to be spilled by Coca-Cola. It's totally absurd, if you accept, of course, unless you convince me that there is a link. But there are no link. It's something more than irrational. You need a psyche, I think, to make us understand. How could you explain this? We have seen Freedom Palestine, and they will show a child, stop supporting child killers, and against, against McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and without your support, McDonald's and Coca-Cola couldn't have killed so many Palestinians. I think it's strange. And this is, and the same, I think we can more or less show you like this. Again, this is English, England, etc. And I don't see the connection between Colgate and Israel. Garnier and Israel, Garnier, can you clean her car with your makeup remover? Boycott Israel.
Quick question.
Yes.
So I understand with the Adidas, they're making the link that they had sponsored Israeli.
Maybe. It's possible. Or they sell the products. Garnier,
do they have a rationale for every product? Or do
No.
they just say,
No, I don't think so.
They don't even go to that level.
For instance, this one. This is, again, a conductor who went to South America, and this is how they represent him to boycott his concert. They represent him like a vampire. Blood. This is interesting. And then again, Garnier. Garnier, Garnier, of course, it's like L'Oréal. It's just, a product, and then stop the bloodshed in Palestine, boycott now. This is Latouf. You heard about it, the most famous cartoonist, a Brazilian one, alter mondialist, etc. And against the same, a child, blood. And then you see, in the supermarket, if you buy Israeli products, and in fact, you will see some skull, c'est ça? Let's say yes. And then you can even buy posters. And what is interesting, posters, and look, baby carriage. And this is really, this is what you will find. And you can ask yourself, okay, maybe it's a good cause, but why do you need to go so far? To more than to criminalize. It's an abomination of the Jews, etc. And it works. So the question is belief or strategy or both. Do they believe it, or just a strategy to convince Europeans to be anti-Israeli? Because, and I don't have the answer, so you won't ask me the question. So why is it important to speak about it? Because the myth of Jewish vampirism, ritual crimes, and blood legend is a social dynamite. It's a social dynamite. The beginning of anti-Semitic violence, like Kielce in 1946. 42 Jews, remember, were killed. 46. And this is the origin of, the fact that most of the remnant of the Polish community, they escape to America and to Israel, etc. They are reactivated, and this mythical story serves as symbolic material for contemporary story. Why? As I said, because this belief is cognitively easy to access, as psychology says, and a good example again of Carlos Latouf, the Brazilian. Some of you are American, you know that during the Vietnam War, some Americans were born to kill. This is the Americans. The Israeli is different. It's born to kill babies, not children, babies. This is 2002. So it's really stick to the Israeli people, and this is kind of cartoons that you will find, not only in Palestine, the Arabic world, but the Israeli soldiers and the babies, Netanyahu as a vampire, classical thing, and then against, a kind of Hasid killing children. And then again, the Jews, the first target of the Jews are Palestinian children. And again, when I say reactivization of old myth, and the fact that, Jesus was not a Jew. Jesus was a Palestinian. And Palestine is the new Christ. And then this is the kind of thing you can find. It's very well done, actually. So you see the Christ, and then you see a Palestinian. And actually, not far times ago, Linda Sarsour said that Jesus was a Palestinian. Yes. Very clever. Yes, exactly, for sure. And this is another example. This is again a beautiful representation of Jesus on his cross. And then you see a Palestinian, and then it said, yes, the first, it's in Portuguese, and the first Palestinian killed He was the first Palestinian killed by the Zionists, by the Zionists, Jesus. This is the level, I would say, of what people would say. And this is American posters. It's even worse, very strange. And it said, she could never dream again because, and this is, you remember, Tzipi Livni, this is Netanyahu. He never became a real boy. Again, the fact, and maybe there is a kind of, publicity company which pushed them to do such a thing, and this is maybe the worst. Peter Pan killed by Shimon Peres. And this is, when I say dynamite, and this could explain also, I would say, the bombing and all the trouble that we have in France and Belgium. This is the demonstration in 2009 against Israel. And look, dolls. Gaza worse than Auschwitz, etc. And Holocaust. And then they will show babies, etc. Maybe you will tell me that they are what in concern other conflicts you will find the same. But honestly, I don't think so. I don't think that you will find so many people in the streets. You know, Gaza, it was a terrible war. 2,000 people were killed. And there were 50,000 people in the street of Brussels. The maximum of people demonstrating against Assad in Belgium was maybe 60 people. And he killed 500,000 of people. Nobody cares about Assad crimes. And the rest, this is in Belgium, when I speak. This is Oxfam, which produced this poster. You know, you don't have to have, Israeli fruits, because Israeli fruits are full of blood. And so, etc. And this was Oxfam. And this is kind of, I would say, again, we go back to the Middle Age. In the Middle Age, there were street theater, you know, people in the street. And then we have very often in the streets of Brussels, people, you know, playing Jews and Zionists and Palestinian. And this man, you know, is Israeli crime, so more or less genocide. And then look, again, how would you call this? Baby trailer? Baby? Carriage, baby carriage, again. Stroller. This is really in the center of Brussels. And this is, again, it's very bad quality. It's a demonstration against a bank who had annexed in Israel, and to force the bank to stop their connection with Israel, they drink, you know, blood. Of course, it's tomato juice, but officially it's blood. Again, you can't see it very well, especially. But let's imagine, this is like medieval anti-Semitic theater. It's nothing else. Against big demonstrations against Israel. This is 2014. And how did you ask the people to demonstrate against Israel? Against the same. Why? Is it innocent? And why would you use it? And for those people of my generation also, it reminds us Potemkin, Dragnoth, of Eisenstein. You know, always the first victim, the innocents by excellence are the children, are the babies, etc. And then you have seen, and then I stopped with this, and I said, this is the problem of today. And this shows a connection between, I would say, anti-Semitism and radical anti-Zionism. I consider only radical anti-Zionism as anti-Semitic. Anti-Zionism, I think, is different. But look, it's not Judaism, it's Zionism, and Israel is unser Unglück. And this shows us, unfortunately, the fact that nothing has changed in a certain way. And it's just a mutation of a very old hatred. So this is the first part of my presentation. This is in my university. It's Palestinian mothers, don't let your children cross this point. And this was a poster in my university, so I make the pictures myself. Children killers ahead. So imagine when you find this, what can you do? Nothing. So, well, okay, this is about Belgium. This is something you will find in the Belgian press. Beautiful pictures. It reminds us, of course, of La Pieta. Jesus being a Palestinian. And again, the press. This is the Catholic main daily. And then, of course, it reminds us And again, you can see more or less, voilà. And this is interesting, and I will speak to you later on this. No. Thank you. Two minutes?
I have a question.
Okay.
When you were talking about Belgium, first I want to come there to write
About, I'm sorry?
When you were talking about Belgium, I noticed that there were more things in French than in Dutch or Flemish.
More what? More?
There were more things about Belgium in French than in Flemish or Dutch than you show now. So I was wondering, for example, because there's quite a big Orthodox community in Antwerp,
Yeah.
if there's a difference in how you talk about it in the Flemish texts or in the French speaking magazines, websites, etc.
It's a good question. I would say mainstream, I would say opposition to Israel or to the Jews will be leftist in the Francophone part and will have Catholic origin in the Flemish part, I think. And you will find this strange thing of, you know, the nationalist movement in Flanders, they are really derived from the collaboration. And so they have a strange relation because on a certain way they oppose the Jews, but they try to appease with Israel. So it's very strange. But for instance, I will show you in the next presentation the fact that there are absolutely no reaction. Both sides of Belgium, they can't react on anti-Semitism for different reasons. And you won't find any condemnation. They don't know how to respond because, as you know, anti-Semitism is far right or it doesn't exist. And this will be my next presentation and we'll answer to you this. But of course there are differences, but not on the causes, but unfortunately the consequences are the same. The Jews are lonely.
So in Belgium there was a parade, some kind of national parade.
Exactly, I should
With
have
a
shown
Jewish
it. And it was not condemned. I should have, of course.
with the Hasidim with the nose.
It was in August, and it was the second time. And they did not understand how you can be infuriated when you connect Jews and money, like in Poland. To them, a Jew looks like Hasidim is rich, which is totally wrong. But it's like this. And so they did not understand. And even we have a center against racism financed by the state. And they said, well, it was just fun. And they refused, to go to court and to defend the Jewish community. It's really, there is a problem of denial, and I would say understanding. We are facing ignorant people. I think ignorance is our worst enemy. Ignorance.
I'm surprised that one of the illustrations you had was from Oxford,
Yeah,
which I did not think of as.
we had many trouble with Oxford. This is a kind of, I would say, leftist anti-Zionism, etc. And unfortunately, they are playing on also the blood, and this is very strange for us. And finally, the poster was taken away. Sometimes we have little victories. It was not my time. This was 10 years ago, more or less.
Like your presentation was, you started off talking about BDS, and then you showed a lot of pictures. I was wondering if really all of the images you showed were embedded in like BDS agitation.
Not true.
And
No.
the other aspect is that the BDS obviously is not, they don't have a central committee,
It's true. It's true.
that tells all groups what they're allowed to say and whatnot. So what I would be interested is if there is a struggle within BDS about what can be said and what should not be said, if it is for moral or also strategic reasons.
No, I don't think there are, but it's
quarrels.
true. There are no center officially. It's not an organization. That's why you cannot prosecute them. It's a nebuleuse, if you understand this word, etc. And so there are some direction, actually. There are some. And actually, as far as I know, because I've been working on this for 1 year, I haven't seen any polemics. There are some within some certain groups. Certain parts of BDS accept the reality of Israel, for instance. Others not, for instance in France. But that's why I show what Barghouti said, because Barghouti is, let's say, the figures. That's why I start with him, and the rest is more or less you can do what you want. And what interests me is in presentation is what kind of material they will use to convince us not to buy the products. But you're right, it's not It's not centralized, but they stay the same, if you want. And this is what struck me, in a sense. I'm sorry, the gentleman there.
Okay, I have a few comments. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation in the morning and also now. And I come from South Africa. I lived there since 2005. I want to say a few things about the BDS and the way that we are responding to it. But before I say that, I want to say something that a friend of mine said. He said there are two types of ignorance. The first type is when there is lack of knowledge. And the second one is when you actually deliberately ignore knowledge. And I think that it's important for us to understand that the BDS campaign is not operating from the paradigm of lack of knowledge. It's operating from the paradigm of ignoring knowledge. Ignoring knowledge. And it's important for scholars to consider that it's not sufficient to actually engage with them intellectually. Because it is not for lack of knowledge that they do what they do.
I think you're right.
It is deliberate. Okay. It's just a way that they have found expression for their hatred against the Jewish people. So what we decided a few years back is that we're not going to be reactive towards an organization like BDS. We're going to rather be proactive. In other words, instead of us chasing their tail, we decide we want them to chase ours. We want to be more proactive towards Israel. And so we established two organizations. The first one that I want to talk about is called DAISY. It's an acronym for Defend, Embrace, Invest, Support Israel. Okay, and it's a registered organization. It's founded by a member of South African Parliament and who responds to anti-Semitism on the floor of the Parliament in Cape Town. But in addition to that, he decided that we, all lovers of Israel, we should establish this organization and use the platform to educate the young people in the universities and even in high schools on to give them the true narrative around Israel. So you can Google that organization. That is one of it. The other one that we have established is called the Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce. So, and you can also Google that and see what we're doing all over Africa, that instead of just responding to the BDS campaign and trying to explain why Israeli products should not be boycotted, we decided to actually promote Israeli products in the different parts of Africa and to highlight for the various communities the value that these products have added to human life. And I want to recommend that also to Europe. To say
we will see it. But if you don't mind, let's go on.
Yeah, let's go on. Let's go on. Go on to your...
What does it mean? It means go on.
Yes, that means go on.
Okay. Like this? Merci. So let's go to the second presentation. And the fact, as I said, now today there is a kind of syncretism between different kind of Jewish hatred. And I've been working in schools in Belgium, and this is more or less the result of what I've been doing. So let's say anti-Semitism, and I would say in Belgium but also in France, it's denial time. And the question is why? Why can't the Belgian, and not only on academic level, but also on the media and on political level, they're not enabled to Well, to discuss and to accept the fact that nowadays, in a sense, anti-Semitism kills more people than I would say. The word I don't like, Islamophobia, but to go fast, and that the first victim of today, at least in Belgium and in France, the first victim of racism are the Jews, and they can't recognize it, and there are, according to me, two reasons. First, and this is in a sense we spoke about bias, and this is the problem, not only ignorance but bias, is the fact that they are prisoners of the post-Marxist, what I call software, and so it means many social scientists have theorized the death of anti-Semitism. As long as the Jew more or less become bourgeois, in a sense they become white people for many people, and white people can't be victim of racism. Only, colored people could be, and the Jews are no more colored, they're white. So that's why they do not invest anymore in working, analyzing anti-Semitic phenomenon. And this is true with the historical anti-racist organization, even those created by Jews. The second thing, they're prisoner of what I call an anti-fascist vision. And as I said, the same scientists, they cannot conceive or accept anti-Semitism that could be not far from the far right. You can't be a racist if you're a Muslim, because you're supposed to be a Semite, which is absurd, doesn't exist, or a leftist. Left anti-Semitism doesn't exist. So it means it's very difficult for them, of course, to learn about it. And so an example of the fact that nobody is answering the question. You will be surprised. In 1914, there was a restaurant in the Francophone part of Belgium, and this man, the owner, was a Turk. And the Turk said in French, my restaurant is allowed to dogs, but closed to Jews. Zionist, he said, in French, but in Turks it's written to Jews, Yahudi. There's no, okay. And this is very strange. Well, this is in 2014, a restaurant forbidden to Jews. And which is very strange that last June, the Belgian prosecutors dropped the case against the cafe owner. This man, well, went through the accusation. And you should understand the desperation of the Belgian community when you see that, 70 years, yes?
Sorry, can I quickly ask you, why did they drop it? What was their explanation for dropping it? Do you know?
Well, because it was just after, I would say, the attack in the Jewish synagogue, and it's in the wake, I suppose, of the different wars between Israel and Gaza. And it's 1914. This is how, don't ask me why the owner of this restaurant decided not to allow the Jews to enter the restaurant. This is like this is what happened. What is important for me is the fact that this man was not prosecuted after 5 years of inquiries, etc. This is another example. Or Socialist Party, which governed Belgium for the last 60 years, they decided to organize a talk about Zionism. Of course, they're anti-Zionists, and say, can we speak freely about Zionism? And what they use this cartoon. And actually, this cartoon is made by an extreme right cartoonist, friend of Dieudonné and Alain Soral, and you can see, look, he is a Jew, a Sturmer kind of Jew, in fact an Israeli, American support, and what did the Jew do? Well, he forced the people to be only interested in the Holocaust and not to the other, I would say, well, it means human rights problem, the Indians, the black people, etc., whatsoever. And this was used by the Socialist Party, yeah.
But who is it? I mean,
this is Zenon.
No, but
Zenon.
he's wearing a mask, so why is it a mask?
Because in fact he's an Israeli, but with strange. He's in Israel, you can see. It's a member of Tzahal with blood, but he pretends to be Jew. But what kind of Jew? No, but you have to know who Zenon is.
So it's an Israeli who tries to look like a Jew.
Exactly.
So he isn't.
Anyway, it's absurd. Everything is absurd there, if I may say so. Another example. There is, a Belgian cartoonist, one of the most famous one, decided to go and to participate to the Iran Holocaust cartoon contest in Tehran. And this man won. He won. He won with this. Wow. You know, Arbeit macht Frei, it means Holocaust, Auschwitz, and Palestine occupation is the same. And you know, in Belgium, in Flanders, they were proud of it. This man became, because he won a prize in Iran, he became cultural ambassador of his village. And it's strange, and we did protest. And actually, the mayor of his city was the Minister of Culture of Flanders, and she couldn't understand. Why? He just won. Ambassador by excellence of the city of Turnhout in Belgium. You understand the trouble? No reaction. And Belgium, I think, is fascinating. So it means this doxa undoubtedly explains the absence of qualitative and quantitative studies on anti-Jewish racism, and as much by dogmatism and precautions, what I call. Why? Because our social scientists cannot, in fact, ignore the real, le réel. In most European states where statistics are available, it is the Jew who constitute the main target, maybe not in Germany, of racist attacks. Thus, in France, in 2018, 50% of racist acts were against Jewish targets, while Jews make up just over 1% of the French total population. 1% and 50% of racist attacks were against the Jews. The gentrification, which is real, of the Jews does not change anything. The scapegoats of yesterday remains, alas, those of today, and aggravating circumstance, their aggressors are not the one that one would like. They're not from the extreme right. As for instance, Gunther Jekyll points out in his various studies, if we stick to the statistics, the perpetrator of anti-Semitic violence when identified are not people from the extreme right, but young people from the suburbs of Islam. And that makes, you know, very difficult for scientists, social scientists to study this. So indeed, all the surveys carried out abroad underline the prevalence of Arab Muslim anti-Semitism. And you know, in France and Belgium, all the 16 people assassinated because supposedly Jewish since 2003 were murdered by radicalized young Muslims, and those are the people, you know the story, of course, who were killed just because they were Jew, or supposedly to be Jew. And they were all killed by young Muslims, all of them. So, yet, all the surveys carried out abroad, okay, this I did. There is one exception of a social scientist, and it's a friend of mine, he's in Flanders, he's called El Chardus, and in 2011, he decided to make an opinion, a survey in Flemish school in Brussels, and he arrived to the conclusion 50% of Muslim pupils had anti-Semitic attitude. Among other pupils, it was far less, but still pregnant, especially among young Catholics. So he arrived to the conclusion that the Muslims were 3 times more anti-Semitic than secular people, and the Catholic who actually practicing Catholic were 2 times more. So it means anti-Semitism is cultural. It has nothing to do with social economic background. At least this is the conclusion. And so we could have expected that in the Francophone side, they will try to reproduce to see if it's correct or not. And nobody decided to do it. They are not the equivalent study in the Francophone part of Belgium. And this man, of course, was attacked. He was sued because people said that he was, of course, Islamophobic, and finally he was not persecuted. But this man, you know, well, you couldn't say such a thing in Belgium. So, in last year, actually, in my university, they decided to, actually because of Britain, Belgian part of the research conducted here in Britain by Feldman, you know, Institute for the Study of the Birkbeck University of London School of Social Science, and they decided to study if anti-Semitism and immigration in Western Europe today, is there a connection? Finally, some people decide to study if there is a connection between Islam and anti-Semitism. And of course, well, And the answer is, inter-university study in 5 countries breaks prejudices, anti-Semitic acts do not increase and are unrelated to the presence of recent immigrants from the Middle East and North Africa. It is the double teaching of a vast, very important, vast investigation which we could consult en primeur. This is in the French magazine, the same, I quote, this is what they say, the researcher, the perceived rise in anti-Semitism is not confirmed by the existing data, etc., 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 etc. And of course, in Belgium, everyone was happy. This is Le Soir, equivalent of the New York Times or Le Monde. And they say a study destroyed all the prejudice against the Muslim, and they show nothing. And this is the Jewish museum where people were killed, so everyone is pleased. Again, and this man, the main, let's say, research was interviewed by the channel number 1, and he said, davantage, more anti-Semitism because of migrants? Good question. And the answer is, of course, no links between anti-Semitism and new migrants. Prime time, first page. So again, okay. And so what is interesting? How many people did they interview to arrive to the conclusion? So they interview me. Of course, I know nothing about this because I know. How should I know? They interview me, and it's really, they didn't put my name correctly. It's Kotek. And I'm not professor, I'm just representing the equivalent of the CRIF, which is not true. So, okay, why not? And so how many people do you think they interview? Vast survey. How many people they interview to arrive to the conclusion? 3 people. 3 people. A female migrant from Guinea, means North Africa. No, Guinea, it's North Africa. You didn't know it. I didn't know it too. A female migrant from Eritrea, also North Africa, and the translator. So 2 people they did interview. And they arrived to the conclusion. And they have a huge press coverage. You can find it on the internet, again. And this is the reality I'm confronted with. Because, of course, I'm director of a magazine. It's a leftist magazine, and I denounce it. My God, I almost had a trial. Because between colleagues, we cannot do this, you know. Okay, 3 persons, but what is important is the fact that it's reassuring. It's good. You know, this is what they wanted. There is a social demand, and they had the social, you know, they had this. So I decided to do it myself. So it took me 4 years, and it's not finished. I'm still working on it because I don't have a lot of money. And so I arrived, and I made a survey. And I interviewed not 3 people. I interviewed 1,600 people in all the schools of Brussels. So I would say my research is representative of today's schools in Belgium. And I interview not only on the representation of the Jew, but the female, the homosexual, the Muslim, whatsoever. And my conclusion is quite different. I don't speak about migrants. The migrants is not important. The important thing is Belgium with Islamic religion, of Catholic religion, etc. And so my finding is Islam is the first religion declared in school in the Brussels region, in Brussels, capital of Europe. Pupils who declare themselves Muslim make up 40% of the total schooling population, 3/4 of them being practicing Muslim, and this is important. The second thing is, I confirm the conclusion of Herr Chardus. Firstly, anti-Semitic prejudice are far from having disappeared in Belgium. Secondly, anti-Semitism prevalence is twice as high among practitioner Catholic and 3 times higher among declared Muslim. Exactly the same result than Professor Chardus. And curiously, prejudice against Jews seems more pregnant, more durable than against Muslim. I would find more anti-Semitism prejudice than anti-Muslim prejudice. And then ignorance of Judaism, of history, is boundless, abyssal. Hence, the proliferation of conspiracy theory. I don't have a lot of time, but I have, and I will show you, because, of course, I'm an historian. So Islam is the first declared religion in Brussels, not in Belgium. Brussels. You can see Muslim, Christian, atheist. So you will find more atheist than Christian. Christian is really disappearing, because if you say practicing Christian, very few. Then the same you can see. So I interview, how do you say, 672 pupils. It's lots more than the 3 people than the other one did. And so, as you say, 39%, 27%, and 9% of other religion, and the Catholic are 25%. So, Jews, do Jews constitute a race? And so, the question is, why is it in French? Who cares anyway? Oh yeah, Jews constitute a race. It's not really English, but who cares? 13% agreed. So you have a bulk of people who still believe that the Jews is a race. And of course, 58% are disagreeing. And what is interesting, you have many people who has no opinion. Only when it's question of Jews. When it's question of other religion or death penalty or something like this, because I was also asking a question about death penalty, European construction is different. When speaking about the Jews, people dare not sometimes to say what they think. Jews constitute a race, and you will see that exactly what I said, this is the non-believer. And the non-believer, only 6% believe. And the previous one was the total, isn't it? Yes. So 6% of non-believer, and 18% of the Muslim believe it's a race. So 3 times more, exactly like El Chardus. And another question, are Islam, Christianity, Judaism religion of peace? And you will find more people who will consider Islam as a religion of peace than Judaism and Catholicism. But it's normal. 40% of the people I interview were Muslim also. You have to understand this. So, Judaism, a religion of peace, total, well, 45% believe okay, no opinion on this, and disagree 8%. The color is not good. And very low Islamophobia. Very few. I was asking how you'd consider this sentence. Each Muslim is a terrorist. It's absurd, the question, of course. And the answer is good. 92% believe that it's absurd to say that Muslims are terrorists. And only 6% has no opinion. Only 6%. They have an opinion. And only 2% believe that Muslim. So it means the level of Islamophobia is very low. And I have no time to speak about this. Would you accept to marry a Jew? A Jewish partner? Personally, I won't. But I know why. No, it's a joke. So, nobody loves. That's terrible. So, would you marry a Jew or a Jewess? So, Muslim, Catholic, what is the rest? And Muslim, Catholic, and atheist. Can I understand my own? Ah oui, okay. Very few atheists want, of course, Catholic and Muslim. So many Muslims will refuse to marry a Jewish lady, etc. So Mossad, 11th September, conspiracy theory. So September 11, it was a Mossad and a CIA plot. So this was the question. This is the total, the 1600. Let's say, for instance, no opinion, 61%. They don't want to answer this, 61%. And agree, 80%. 80% accept. But this is interesting too. 61% don't want to answer the question. If you consider the same question only the Muslim people, well, it's 28% would consider, the 11th September as a CIA and a Muslim plot. So you see the difference between, again, 80%, 28%. And if you say Christian, believer Christian, it's 15%. And 69% who has no opinion, and then you will find the non-believer, what the difference? Only 8% of the non-believer would believe it's a CIA plot. So really there is a link between, I would say, your position on religion and your attitude toward Jews. The same, Zionists are criminals. It means Muslim excluded, so I take out the Muslims, and 80% believe that a Zionist is a criminal if you exclude the Muslim. And this one, and 40% of the Muslim, if so, are the Zionists criminal, agree 36%. 36% of my Muslim population believe, etc. Let's go. The Jews, do they control the bank, the media, with the Freemason? This is the total. What about the Jews and the Freemason? Did they control? 21%, it's a lot. 21, it means 20% more or less of of the people I did interview believe that the Jews do control. 21%, if it's the, and this is the total, my God, what's the difference with this? Total is the same. There's a problem here, who cares? No, I care, of course. The non-believer, look the difference, it's only 8% of the non-believer. And this is the Muslim, I suppose. And the Muslim, there will be 36% of the Muslim who believe that the Jews control the bank, thanks with the help of the Freemason, etc. Yeah, of course.
Just one picture. Thanks. So, what do you make out of like half of Muslims who don't agree?
It's true. It means it's important too. My answer doesn't say the Muslim anti-Semite. It's like a Chaldeus, just to say that you will find more prejudice within the Muslim. That's it, and within the practicing Catholic. Then this is the conclusion I'm arrived to. I won't say they're anti-Semite or things like this. Just the fact that religion seems to be the factor which will make the difference, considering, I would say, your attitude toward Judaism, toward the Jews. This is what I can say.
But you always have high percentages of people who do not give an answer.
It's true. I don't know. It means, as I said, it's difficult there are different kind of interpretation. One interpretation is they know that it's dynamite and they don't want to engage themselves. And I would say that those people usually they have prejudice, because if not, they will say no.
You said school children,
What age? 17, 19, or 21. It's the end. And so the other question, for instance, do the women should stay at home? Because also we ask this, and you will see, look, only 7% of people who didn't give their, say, I don't know, I have no opinion on this. Only, you see the difference. This is interesting too. And of course, the majority, 90%, would say no. This is why I knew you would answer this question. So that's why I show this. But of course, it's not easy for me to understand. So I have to be very careful. I don't have also to blame and to go too far in my conclusion. That's why I haven't write it yet. And if you say the same question, so the Muslim, there will be like 22% compared to, I would say, the previous one is 3%. So there's a difference. And everything is connected, etc. Is the Holocaust greatly exaggerated? Of course, the total would say no. It's not greatly exaggerated. But 14% of the total will say yes, and 39% has no opinion. This is the total. And only 6% of non-believer. And 21% of the Muslim will agree that the fact that Holocaust is exaggerated. Then let's go back about Hitler. Gaza, is Gaza worse than Auschwitz? Yeah, we finished. It means I'm good? No, it means I'm finished. So, Gaza worse than Auschwitz, and you will see, 67% has no answer, didn't want to engage. They have no opinion on this. 80% are rather agree. There are more people, at least more people who would say that Gaza is worse than Auschwitz. Total, practicing Christian, look the difference, of course, and then if you say the atheists, at least 22% disagree. And the Muslim will be 38% of the Muslim agrees that it's worse, and the rest is 54 has no opinion on this. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we ask 100 questions. Oh my God, I can stay. And is Aleppo worse than Auschwitz? And it's the same, et cetera. Which means that ignorance is terrible also. They don't know what Auschwitz is, and they don't know what the war in Syria is. So I will stop here. There are no questions because I'm tired. Yes? Good. No, if there is a question, of course.
Oh, is this published?
Not yet. It's going to be published, I think it's September. I'm waiting for, how to say, a sociologist, statistician to help me. Because, of course, it's quite difficult and I have to be extremely careful. Because, as you know, if you understand how Belgium is, I could be lynched if I say the truth. So I have to be, so I will be yes and no, mais en même temps like Macron. I will have to be careful. So let's hope it's going to be published. And it's going to be published in France by a leftist organization called La Fondation Jean Jaurès, which will help me, because if not, they will say I'm an extreme rightist, of course. I'm sorry?
We have 2 questions.
No, really?
I would like to
They don't understand my English? I say no question, go on. Okay.
I'm pushy. I'm curious, where do Belgians get most of their news? Is there like the British have the BBC here?
It's the equivalent. It's going to be like television. Yes, television. And the television is biased, terribly biased. And I've written a lot about it, for instance, very, very strangely. When they will speak about the conflict between, for instance, Gaza and Israel, they will always show, you know, bodies of children. They will always show, you know, the consequences, etc. And they will show the pictures. And when they will show wars in Gaza, not in Gaza, but let's say in Syria, in Somalia, they will, how to say, they won't show any pictures, or they will, on appelle flouter, they refuse themselves, they will softenize, if you understand this word. And and I wrote 100 pages on this too. And there is a bias in our press, definitely. You know, our press is as anti-Israeli that Fox is pro-Israeli in the United States, if you want a comparison.
Is Al Jazeera?
Yes, sure,
broadcast?
definitely, of course. Of course, we've got.
And are there Muslim Belgian channels as well?
Of course, there are. Definitely, they have their own television, etc. You have to understand, 40% almost of our population, not 40%, but at least 30% of Belgian population, they worship Islam, etc. They are strong. It's and it explains a lot. There is what I can also. I spoke like this last year about anti-Semitic electoralism. You know, it's almost impossible for a leftist party to support Israel because they will lose their votes. Those parties, they should be anti-Israeli or anti-Armenians, because it's the same. We've got a huge Turkish population in Belgium. And one example, in the 24th of April of this year, 24th of April, and 24th is the day of the commemoration of the Armenian genocide, 24th of April, everywhere in the world. And our Belgian politician in the chamber choose this day to vote a law condemning any kind of denial of genocide. It means Tutsi genocide, which is good. Yugoslavian, it means Bosnian genocide, but not the Armenian genocide. You can deny the Armenian genocide. Why? Because the Turkish lobby is extremely strong. And this was the day of the commemoration of the Armenian genocide. It was an insult to them. They are not anti-Armenians. Just the Armenians, they don't count anymore, like the Jews. We are 15,000. What is 50,000 voters? Nothing. Yeah.
Am I right to assume that you were the one who made up the options for the answer for all those choices?
Yes, I did it with sociologists, etc., with other professors.
So I was wondering why you chose pad that week instead of something like electricity pad, because that seems more neutral and more.
Good question.
Was there a
No, I
conscious
don't know.
Okay.
But good question. Why not? I have no opinion.
We didn't expect so many people who would have no, but yet then you see, you know, it depends on the question. On death penalty, everyone is in, and then I've got other question, etc. But it's quite an adventure to organize such a thing, especially if you don't have a lot of money. Yes.
Hi. Did you say at the start of our day together that you present some of these materials to the French police?
What?
Or have I imagined that you present some of these materials?
No, not this one. My previous, definitely.
Are the same kind of materials? Is it the same kind of dynamic that you present to them?
I'm sorry?
Is it the same kind of materials that you present to the French police?
Of course, but in French.
But not the...
But far better in French.
Yeah, but not the anti-Zionist part.
Yes, of course I would.
Okay.
It's
You would.
important for them because
Defending the IRA declaration, which says on certain occasions anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, in other cases not. I consider you can criticize the government of Israel. You know, criticizing Netanyahu for me is not anti-Semitic. To be against the government, even being anti-Zionist, even if it's strange, the only people who cannot have a state would be the Jews, but even this I could accept if you want. It's strange. But you know, you've got religious anti-Zionism and religious, you know, and extreme leftist anti-Zionism. So we have to accept the Bund, for instance. But I think it's important to explain, for instance, to the policeman that sometimes when you criticize Israel, in fact, you oppose the Jews. It's just a pretext. They just use another words to attack the real target, the Jewish people.
And what kind of reception do you get from that when you talk about it?
Well, as I said, I'm better in French, so I think it's good. No, I think honestly, they learn a lot because for them it's new. They know nothing. You have to understand, ignorance is really... No, I think, let's say I'm popular in French.
Time for a break.